Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21 Hats podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Feldman. This week, Jay Goltz, Liz Picarazzi, and William Vanderbloemen discuss how business is holding up and whether they've gotten past the labor shortage. Short answer, no. The conversation veers into a discussion of how to finance growth and what to do when your bank is unresponsive. And then Liz explains her intense distaste for dealing with lawyers, accountants, and insurance agents, and how she's trying to cope with it. Believe me, responds Jay, I haven't paid enough attention to certain things that I should have, and it's cost me. But yeah, we can't every day just do the inspiring, cool, fun, oh my god, we had the big sale, look at the problem I solved thing. It's all part of the package. Even in good times, owning and running a business can be a lonely pursuit. Our hope is that these weekly conversations will let owners know they are not alone in facing challenges. Same thing with our daily newsletter, the 21 Hats Morning Report, which Inc. magazine recently named the best newsletter for business owners, and which you can subscribe to at 21hats.com, where you can also find transcripts of our podcast episodes and lots of other articles and interviews. Joining me this week on the podcast are regulars Jay Goltz, whose companies in Chicago include a picture frame business, artist frame service, and a home furnishing store, Jason Home. Liz Picarazzi, who is CEO of City Bin, which is based in Brooklyn, New York, and makes trash enclosures and package bins. And William Vanderbloemen, who is CEO of Vanderbloemen Search Group, a Houston-based recruiting firm that works with churches and other faith-based organizations. The episode is titled, Employees Still Have the Leverage. Welcome, Jay, Liz, and William. It's great to have you all here. Somehow we managed to have completed half of this year. So I'm kind of curious to check in and see how's business, how things are going, especially with everybody predicting a recession looming. William, how about you?
Well, Lauren, I'm going to risk alienating clients saying this, but a good bit of our work is with churches. And one of the more crass things that's been said over the years is, churches and liquor stores both do well in bull markets and recessions. Everybody needs comfort or religion or security in turbulent times and in times of plenty. And I don't want to jinx things, but historically, when the economy's down, our church clients are actually busier, which is a good thing. And that can often lead to needing more staff, more help. The church moves a little slower than the business world, and it's still coming out of whatever kind of lockdowns and pandemic things that the rest of the world's kind of come out a little quicker. So I'm cautiously optimistic that things are really good.
Are you seeing any signs of change at all? Is there anything evolving there that you're concerned about?
Well, I'm always concerned. We're a startup. We took the kids to Europe. This was our spring break 2020 trip that got reworked to 21 and then reworked to later 21. And we finally went in 22. We had dinner in a restaurant that started in 8:03. And it was, toward the end of June. And we sat around and our kids are, old enough to have a real conversation. And we talked about how we really are the great experiment as a country. I mean, we really have not been around very long. And then you think about my business. Well, yeah, 14 years. That's not that long. So am I concerned? I'm always concerned. We're still an experiment as a company in a country that's kind of still an experiment. So I think the day I quit being concerned, I ought to get really concerned.
But you're not seeing any signs of recession?
Not yet. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens if we really do enter a recession, which maybe we do, maybe we don't. Education, so private school, particularly on a secondary level, has across the board been in the biggest rush of new business that they've had in my lifetime. I think no matter where people were on opinions about mask or no mask or vax or no vax or the one thing everybody really agreed upon is the public school system failed children during the pandemic badly. And so there's a lot of people who are like, it really would be worth the money to get into a private school where there's a little more latitude to make decisions independently. And if we go into a severe recession or maybe even a moderate recession, maybe those dollars won't be available to do private school. That would be the place that I'd see, harder times. On the nonprofit side, I don't know how to predict. I've seen so many studies that show that the most generous America ever was in terms of charitable giving was in the early 1930s. So I don't know. Maybe I'm being Pollyannish, but will people have money to pay private school tuition? That's probably a place that we ought to keep an eye on.
Liz, you told us a few months ago that you were seeing some softening. That was fairly early.
So with the residential segment, we've felt it in terms of, numbers on it. I would say it's maybe between 15 and 20% reduction. But meanwhile, we've had a lot of growth among two other segments. One is repeat customers. So we tend to work multiple times with property managers, architects, developers. They've continued to order from us. We haven't seen any softening in that. And we've also focused on that, really generating more revenue from that segment. And the second one, as I've discussed on here, is any sort of government work. So the business improvement districts in New York City that are doing the trash containerization, which is a Department of Sanitation project. We're rolling that out to multiple neighborhoods in New York City, and it's just kind of the beginning. And then in addition, nationwide, any other cities that saw those articles, and there were many of them when the mayor announced it in April, have contacted us as well. So, we're working with Hoboken and Philadelphia and DC and Chicago. Jay, you'll find that interesting. Chicago contacted us.
Really?
So in some of it, that's definitely made up for the softening in regular residential and some. But that was also not sort of a spontaneous thing. I've had an obsession with this Clean Curbs program in New York for over 2 years since it was announced pre-pandemic. And we did a lot of legwork and marketing to the bids, as well as to the city, so that when the program actually took off, we were really the main player in the space. So, I'm not feeling worried about a recession because, whether it be our hard work in advance or some sort of higher power at the time we needed it, we are feeling like we're in a good place right now. And I know in down times, having government contracts is always the way to go. And that also comes out of my time at Amex. I know that, in the 2008, 2009 time frame, we did a lot of marketing and program work with businesses that wanted to get government contracts because it's a more reliable source of revenue. And I always kind of had that in the back of my head. If I can go out there and get some government contracts in downtimes, that's going to help me.
Don't you have tremendous exposure, though, with getting paid from this? Because I know people that are waiting for money from the city, and it's bad. I mean, isn't that a huge potential problem?
Yes, it is. It is. We actually have submitted our first invoices, and we are wrestling with not only their policies, but also their actual payment technology systems.
Will the bank lend you money against that?
No. I already tried that as well. So I got a very wimpy line of credit. It's like $200,000. So we're dipping into that to finance the production, which is on its way with our factory.
Are you with a big bank?
No, I'm with a local bank, and I switched to them because I experienced the BS from Chase and thought that if I went with a local bank, I could avoid that. But they're just as procedural. They just plug numbers into their program and it spits out what you're eligible for. I even asked them, if I bring in a PO from the city of New York, would you be able to raise this? And they said, no, for no reason, we need to wait for your 2022 tax returns.
I have a lot of experience with the whole bank thing, and I can tell you it's a job, which isn't terrible. You got to shop banks. You made a good move from going from the big bank. Chase is not in the business of helping small business. They might say they are in their ads, but that's not where they make their money. They're in retail and they do huge business. Okay, so there's a ton of banks though out there. Not a ton. There's usually in every city, at least in Chicago. I'll just talk about Chicago. There's 8 banks in Chicago that are hungry for small business because that's where they make their living, and it depends on where they're at, in what cycle, and how well they're doing, how busy they are. But it's you got to work them all, and one of them rises to the top and says, "Yeah, we want that business." So I'm not. I think you can find a bank that will be more flexible because you got the money's coming. It's a city contract. I would put that on your to-do list of just checking some other banks out. think you're going to need it. I think.
Yeah, I guess I just get so discouraged from the attempts that I've made and talking to other small businesses that also tried to make a move to a smaller bank. And I can't find anybody who's had a good experience, like literally not one small business. And I know many of them.
Okay, you're talking to one. People get discouraged and they stop. You have to say to yourself, okay, I'm just going to talk to 4 banks, and one of them is going to, and that's I just helped a guy I know in a business group. He had 3 different banks. He's got this incredible opportunity. He does business online. He needed a huge line, and he told me the 3 banks he was dealing with. And I said, yeah, they're going to play nice with you, and they're going to leave you at the altar. And exactly what I thought was going to happen. He called me. I called the one bank I know who's aggressive, that's looking for business. Boom, he got the loan. I mean, there's a bank out there that's looking for business. You just might not be at that bank. So you don't get discouraged is my point. There's always a bank looking for business, usually.
I've never experienced that hunger from them.
Well, because you haven't talked to that many banks. That's my point.
By the way, it doesn't necessarily have to be a bank in your location. Ami Kassar, the finance expert who's been on this podcast, talked about how he for years told people to bank with small banks, but didn't follow his own advice until he got the runaround from his big bank and finally gave up on them and found another bank that's on the other side of the country and is banking with them and having a very good experience. So that's one other person, Liz.
You got to find a bank that doesn't just check the boxes, because lots of them, that's all they do. They just check the boxes, and there's no personal judgment. And I'm not talking about, oh, I'm a good guy, you should lend me. No, I'm talking about you've got a contract that's worth money. Somebody should lend against that. If you didn't have that, I'd say, yeah, you got a problem. But I don't think you're going to have a problem finding a bank that's going to say, wow, that's good. She's got all these government contracts. She'll get paid.
Liz, how are you doing with supply? You've had some supply chain issues throughout this period. It sounds like you now have a lot of business in the works. Are you able to get enough product to deliver on all these new clients?
So I think that we did a better job of purchasing inventory the last time we did, which I think was in like March. We're going to be getting a very big shipment in August of 4 containers coming over.
Do you know for sure they're going to arrive in August?
I feel fairly certain that they are. I don't know any businesses that are clogged up. And I'm really surprised by that because our factory was shut down for 4 weeks.
In Shanghai, right?
In Shanghai, yeah. So the other reason why supply hasn't been as much of an issue is that I won the argument with Frank about how much to purchase.
That's your husband.
Frank is my husband. He usually comes to me with a buying plan, and I look at it, and I usually say double it and sometimes triple it. We argue about it for a little bit. Then I remind him about the impact of being sold out to customers that want to buy. And it's not just the potential lost business. It's the time that gets sucked up of staff time, chasing the factory, chasing containers, going through customs. Every little thing when you're in a supply chain clog is also time consuming for the business. So right now we're not experiencing those blockages. At least we haven't detected it yet. We actually placed another order this week that's going to be delivered in November. And we once again had a little bit of a quarrel about quantities. And this time I think he actually kind of won it for a number of reasons.
Why'd you let him win?
I mean, I'm still feeling a little bit cautious. I'm still feeling like it's been just a year and a half or so since we kind of got out of the pandemic from a business perspective, that I thought, you know what, if people want to order and they have to wait 2 to 3 months, let's do that. If people are willing to wait. We really don't have any competitors. We did it for over a year during the pandemic. People were paying us 100% in full and not getting their bins for 6 months. And we weren't losing business over that.
Lauren, there's another answer to that, which we just talked about. She doesn't have an unlimited fountain of money, so she could end up with tons of inventory and not be able to pay her bills. So it is a balancing act. You got to have inventory, but you also have to be able to pay your bills. So that's why I'm saying all part of it is if you could find a good bank that'll lend on contracts, you'll have some more cash. But that's a constant problem in business. Luckily for you, your product doesn't get stale. which in some businesses it does. You buy the spring. Look at what happened to Target and everybody. They bought all their spring merchandise and oops, they got too much. Your boxes aren't going to go out of fashion in 3 months.
How are you doing in terms of shipping? Is that still as expensive and fraught as it had been?
No, it's been completely liberated. I actually have no worries about it. The price of containers has come down. At one point, we were paying $32,000 per container. And on our most recent buy, it was about $11,000 per container.
Wow.
It's insane how much the cost has come down. And the $32,000 per container also was with a really long wait time and, getting caught up in the shipyards and in tariffs. And so I'm feeling a lot better about shipping. We're not getting the runaround from all the intermediaries like we were getting before.
Liz, what was the pre-pandemic cost of the container?
Pre-pandemic was about what it is now, actually.
So it's not even really affected by inflation.
It isn't. And it's also weirdly not affected by China shutting down or Shanghai area shutting down for 4 weeks.
It's simple supply and demand. They had more people that needed the containers than they could take care of. So somebody there just figured, what the hell, let's triple the price. And they got away with it.
How are you doing, Jay?
Clearly, business is getting a little softer. And I'm just paying attention to the details because what I've learned is when you're in a recession, nothing really changes except doing stupid stuff.
What do you mean nothing really changes?
Nothing really changes in that you still got to take care of customers. You still have to take care of employees.
Well, if your business softens, that's a change.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's a change, except that doesn't mean if I wanted to do good service before recession, I can just throw up my hands and go, well, it's a recession. We don't have to worry about taking care of customers anymore. And I see lots of companies that make what could be fatal errors going along. And, in the 3 buckets, I'll just give one example from each. On the marketing side, if your marketing was working before, if you can afford to keep doing it cash flow wise, I've never cut. I usually just keep doing it because if you built up a presence in a certain medium and it was working, cutting that off for a year or two could be very costly. So I'm still spending money on advertising. On the management side, this is where people make mistakes of, I'm not giving any raises out. You can lose some great employees like that. And this is a bizarre maybe recession in that I'm still having an extremely difficult time finding people to work in my warehouse. And I can't figure out why. They call, they make an appointment to come in for the interview, and they don't show up. So at the same time, the labor shortage is still profound.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone with that.
Well, 2 years ago, we thought it was the unemployment payments that people were sitting at. Well, those are all dried up now. So I have no explanation for it anymore. William,
are you seeing anything like that?
Everywhere. And I don't know quite how to make sense of it. I do know that, talking with some friends that are in banking, that whatever the right words for the debt to asset ratio for households right now is the lowest it's been in a long time. People just aren't in debt like they used to be. I don't know if that's lower credit card spending or if Dave Ramsey's actually making a dent in the budgeting problem people face. But there's not I gotta make that payment that's going on. And maybe that's part of it. On the higher end, I do hear people, we still get I can work from home, or I want this many PTO hours, or I want this many amenities at the office. The pendulum of the employer having leverage or the employee having leverage is still definitely on the employee side right now. It seems like, Jay, I'm with you. I don't know how do people feed themselves.
Right. No, you're right with the pension thing. The part I don't get is, why did you call for the job, have a pleasant conversation on the phone, say, okay, I'll come in for an interview, and then not come in for I don't understand why people are.
Or get all the way, just had this happen in a really big search for a very high level position, all the way down, reference checks, background checks, done. And then at the last minute, the candidate wanted double the salary that was, put through the whole interview process. And when the employer said, we can't do that, they said, okay, well, I'm out. And I mean, that's still happening. So it's just, I don't know how to explain it, Jay. I got to think that like you say, supply and demand, eventually people's personal supply and demand will warrant them not being so demanding.
I just hired back somebody who left to go to work at a big company. He needed to pay off his school loans. He hated to leave, but they offered him way more money. He's coming back for a pay cut, for a substantial pay cut, because he wants to work here. So it's not all bad. It's just the warehouse in particular, though, is where my problem is. And then the third category of the recession bad ideas is to stop spending money on stuff that you should be spending money on. Maybe your truck looks terrible and you think, we shouldn't buy a new truck. Well, if you need a new truck, you need a new truck. So if I've got an issue with, I need a mason to come out and fix some of the bricks on the building. And my kid says to me, well, maybe we should wait till, business is better. I go, the leak doesn't know the difference whether there's a recession or not. We don't need a leaky brick or a leaky roof so I think you still have to I'm confident you still need to maintain your buildings and maintain your business. But every one of those categories, whether it's management, finance, or marketing, I see companies making mistakes.
William, about, I think 6 months ago, before the year began, you introduced us to the memorable phrase, the vomit list. And you talked about being proactive about trying to lock up your most important employees. I'm curious, halfway through the year, with the labor shortage continued, has that strategy worked for you?
So far, so good. It's not bulletproof.
Remind us quickly what you did.
Yeah. So, what is the vomit list? Ask yourself this question. Anybody who owns a business with employees has had the employee walk in and say, hey, can we talk for a minute? It won't take long. And it's usually at the end of the day and you go, oh man. Okay. Or maybe you say, oh, finally, I don't know. But what would happen if someone walked in your office to resign? Who in your company, when they said, I want to resign, would make you want to, first thing, reach for a trash can and throw up? Because it's like, oh boy, this is really going to be bad. It's probably not a long list. It's probably 2 or 3 people. And my suggestion was figure out what that list is and do whatever you can to lock them down for whatever period of time you need to be able to find a replacement. So maybe it's like, for me, it was sales. I really needed my head of sales to stay through the end of 2021. And I paid her a retention bonus to stay through 2021. And I knew it probably wouldn't last. And on about January 3rd of 2022, she came to the office and said, okay, I'm leaving. And she's going to work for a mission agency. She's actually taking a pay cut. We're still very good friends. She still trains my salespeople. But it got me through the date that I knew I needed. So that worked well, even though she left. Other people, it has worked well and they've stayed. Because I think the whole looking for other jobs is sometimes like dating around, and then you kind of don't know what you got till it's gone. Sometimes people look around and they end up coming back saying, this is better than I thought it was.
That's what Jay just said.
My guy loved working here, and he was sick leaving, but they offered him so much money. He owed a bunch. He had to leave, and I got it. And I called him. He's thrilled to come back.
That's the kicker. I lost a head of marketing who did a fabulous job for me for a long, long time. But another company that really needed a marketing person was like, we're just going to pay anything to get her. And they did. And I don't really fault her for leaving. I hate it, but I couldn't have kept her. So you say, how's it working? I think it's about as well as it can. And I'm not looking to like sew people up forever with me. And no one's a permanent employee. And my goodness, I've had to learn they're not my employees, right? They're humans that have their own lives and their own dynamics. I think what I'm trying to do with the vomit list suggestion is just plant an idea in my own mind first, and then in other business owners' minds. What do I do to keep people long enough to create room for a replacement strategy? Because every employee is an interim employee.
Okay, wait, I got to stop you on that. That's simply not true. I have lots of people. I have 15 people that have been here for 20 some years that will be here till the day they retire. So I don't buy that everyone's interim.
And then they will retire.
Well, okay, that's true. That's true. They will. No, I always liked your line that every clergy is interim. That was brilliant. No, okay, you're right. They will. But I'm just saying there are people that will stay with you their whole career.
And then their career ends.
You're right.
I'm rebuilding my lead team. I lost a couple of them during the pandemic, and no bad leaves. I'd serve as a reference for every one of them. But in rebuilding, I've been very intentional saying, okay, we're not going to discriminate, but if I have a chance to build out a younger team, I will, because everybody gets older and everybody's interim. So when I have a chance to replace, I want to replace with someone, give somebody a chance that might not have as much experience and rebuild something that might last a little longer next time.
Can you talk about wanting to hire younger people, William?
Can I talk about it? You mean legally? Can I talk about it?
Yes, that's my question.
I don't know the answer to that.
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say you can't make a statement that I'm going to hire younger people, because that implies you're not going to hire older people.
I tried to couch it very carefully.
You failed.
I'm not going to discriminate. Well, how is that any different? How is that any different than saying I'm not going to discriminate, but if I have a chance to add diversity, I will? It's no different.
That's an interesting question.
I'm not going to discriminate, but if I have a chance to give a younger person a chance and build a younger team, I will.
I think just saying I'm going to try to get a young person that I give a chance to, okay, that makes sense. And certainly I find this interesting. If you look at my company, all these long-term employees, I got every one of them at 22, 23 years old. I grew them all. None of them came from the corporate world and came here and made the conversion.
Let me interrupt you, Jay, and say one of the biggest nightmares we have in succession is when, I'll use the church as an example, a senior pastor comes in young and does a 32, 35-year run all the way to retirement, hires young friends with them, they all age together, and then the entire ecosystem has to get replaced when the pastor retires. That's a mess.
Absolutely. No, for sure.
So if you're not constantly rebuilding and replenishing your team with people that will last, you're doing a disservice to your company.
No question. No. And I do have different layers of, I have the ones that are in their 50s now or 40s. I also have some in their 30s that are coming up. So no, you're 100% right.
Liz, have you had issues with labor?
No, not really, actually. And I have hired 4 people in the last couple of months. Because of the growth in the government work, we've hired a couple of installers. And I have had a lot of, I don't want to say luck, but I have a couple of employees that are from Venezuela who have a ton of friends that have also moved to the U.S., like all completely legally, completely on the books. But what I've found is that most of these men, and they are men coming from Venezuela, have technical handy skills that the average American man doesn't have. And so I essentially have an employee that's recruiting people who have been incredibly reliable, require very little training, and actually are very loyal because they like working together. It's also a way that we can give them better work than maybe they would have gotten if they were doing like seamless deliveries, some of them had been before. So I think there will come a time when my, this sounds awful, but I'm going to say it anyways, like my Venezuelan pipeline, it's going to go. But for the last few years, we've gotten some incredibly good employees through employee referrals.
Some business owners worry about taking recommendations of friends. I think the concern is that if you hire too many people who are friends, you risk the situation where if you annoy one of them or have a problem with one of them, you end up having a problem with several people. Have you had any concerns about that?
Very little. I think that in some of the issues that we've had, we've just been able to deal with them through like better communication and kind of playing the hierarchy card. So if one of my managers is having an issue with one of the installers, he can bump them up to talk to me. And that, that means something. If Liz needs to step in and kind of reprimand or look over things, that's been pretty effective.
I can tell you I've been living that world for 40 years, and I have lots of family members working for me. And while there can be an occasional problem, the upside is way bigger than the downside. And if you run the company properly, which I'm not saying I always did, they know when someone's doing something they shouldn't be doing. And, they don't just stick with them because it's their brother. They know the guy didn't show up on time. He didn't do a good job. I've managed it and it's worked out just fine. I have lots of people working for me that, we fired their brother, but they know their brother wasn't doing what they were supposed to be doing. So I believe if you have a strong corporate culture of they all understand what you need to do for the business to be successful and they bought into that they might not be thrilled you fired their brother, but they understand and accept it. And I think I've heard people say, oh, I never hire relatives. Wow. If that was the case in my case, I'd say a third of my employees have a relative working here.
William, do you agree with that?
The bulk of the U.S. economy is built on family businesses. So I had a client who hired a nephew, and he told the rest of his team, I told Josh, I said, Josh, it's only nepotism if you suck.
Smart. That's a good line.
I am learning that there's a higher probability of, I'll call it familial myopia. Everyone thinks their son is awesome because their son is a direct reflection on their own gene pool. So there's maybe a need for, it sounds like sales, but outside counsel to take a look at family candidates and give you not a hire or don't hire, but more like here are the known strengths and here are the risks you need to work around if you're going to make this move.
I want to move to another topic. Liz, during the week we emailed and you talked about an issue that you have that you sometimes, to your detriment, in your words, try to avoid doing certain tasks. Can you tell us what you were referring to and why it's an issue?
Sure. So in both of my businesses, as all businesses need to do, you need to talk to lawyers, accountants, and insurance agents. And as I've grown, I realize there's more and more need to talk to those people. And I find it really unpleasant to talk to people who are going to remind me of the risks of being in business. It's definitely a little bit of, maturity. It's kind of a juvenile reaction. But when I meet with a lawyer or an insurance agent, those two in particular, I sometimes have such an adverse reaction that I need to go home and take a nap. Like, it's so draining to me. Literally. Like in my old business, everyone knew if Liz meets with an insurance agent, she's going to be exhausted and check out early. And that's why I say it's juvenile to have such a visceral reaction to having a conversation with someone about your risks. And I know that they're only doing their job. They're talking about the worst case scenario. But I compare that to the feeling of, like, this morning, I went over to Queens to talk to someone that we're working with on locks and various hardware. And I so enjoyed that it put me in a good mood because it was creative, it was problem solving, it was moving forward. I recently had an experience where I needed a fairly simple subcontract done. And the people I talked to seemed very salesy. And I often have not thought that lawyers are that way. But when I really look at it and I look at some past experiences, I do realize they sometimes sell you more than you really need, or they freak you out to the point that you're willing to almost pay anything. And that was such a negative feeling. This is with a lawyer that I haven't dealt with yet, so it was a new person. But I felt like there was potentially some overselling. But you need to get it done. So then you feel like you're forking over the money and you have a bad taste in your mouth. And then that lingers for a while.
Listen, I give you credit for you recognize there's an issue with this and it's a problem. So good for you. You're halfway there. The question is, this is the symptom of the problem. And what's the real problem? So in my own, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I play one on TV. Are you a control freak would you call yourself a control freak and you can't deal with stuff that you can't control? Is that a possibility? I got two options.
I don't think it's that. I think it's more...
Let me try the second one.
Oh, wait, go to the second one.
Okay, so the second one with the lawyer in particular, lawyers I found are not particularly good salespeople, but they spend their entire days dealing with problems. So for them, oh my God, what just happened to my other, that's all they see is problems, which is why you got to be careful to take advice from a lawyer because all they ever see is problems because that's what they do for a living. I don't think they were selling you. I think they're just telling you, look at all the problems I'm dealing with. I mean, if you worked in an emergency room, you probably would never ride a motorcycle, is my guess, because you'd be seeing all the people coming in. So if you're a lawyer and you see all these problems, that's all they ever see. So I think they're telling you but they don't see the people that don't have any problems because they're not calling on them. I mean, the guy that didn't get sued from an employee is not a client of theirs. All they have, every single one of their clients, if they're a labor attorney, is somebody's being sued from an employee. So they think that all employees sue people. So I don't think they're selling. They're just, I think you got to get perspective of, yeah, whatever.
I mean, with this recent interaction, I think I kind of was. I could just kind of tell by their intake process that there was a little bit of like, here's what we're going to do first. And then you're going to need this second bit of work too, but we'll get to it later. And they wanted me to kind of commit to that second level of work. And I didn't want to. I really wanted to just see how the first level went. And that made me feel like it was kind of, a sell. And then the other thing I don't like, and I'm sure we've all experienced this, is that there's sometimes a front person from the firm that brings in the business, does the sale, and then they farm the work out to some subcontractor and God knows where. And then suddenly that's the person that you're dealing with on your patent, which is expensive and time consuming, and you want to have done completely right. I mean, I know that's the way that they do their business, but like, I would love it if I could go to one firm and have all of my contractual employment, all of my IP, all done in one place. Like, if someone as a business idea could make that happen, I think they would do really, really well.
I think that I've done this a lot, but I think that exists. Well, you probably know more about it than I do. I'm surprised that doesn't exist, because I just, for the first time ever, hired a trademark copyright IP guy, and he seems to be taking care of everything. Maybe I'm dumb and he's farming it out. I never thought that was a possibility. Let me ask you this. I get a third. This is my third one. Do you have trust issues, do you think?
Yeah, I think a little bit. I definitely have that a little bit, because I have been kind of swindled by people in the past. I mean, I think the core issue, I don't know if it's exactly any of those three, maybe a little bit of each. I think that I just, as an entrepreneur, I like to be in a certain headspace. And I hate it when my headspace is robbed by tasks like renewing your insurance policy. Like, it affects me so much more than it should.
It's not a productive activity. You're not advancing the cause of the business in a tangible way. I mean, you have to do it, but it's not fun. It's not creative. It's not leading to the outcomes you're most.
Okay, so then number 4, I'm on 4, is you haven't accepted yet that, it's all part of the entrepreneur thing. I mean, I don't like doing it either, but I do what I got to do.
You guys all find ways to delegate. Maybe the question, Liz, is why haven't you assigned these duties to Frank?
So that's something I'm in the process of doing, because he saw what a foul mood I was in for literally 3 days after my last interaction with a lawyer.
Wow.
And he knows that that's something that needs to come off of my plate, or to at least us do it in tandem for a little bit. And I mean, he's aware that I guess I'm just sort of this entitled entrepreneur where I only want to be doing creative, inspiring things.
Aha, the breakthrough. We've had a breakthrough. Yes, that's pretty much the story. Okay.
Well, what does that suggest, Jay?
And you know what? I totally appreciate and respect that you know this about yourself, that you know it's putting you in a funk, but I'm hoping that you will process this. You just said it. You have to accept whatever. I'm going to have to deal with the lawyer. And I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I don't love that stuff either, but I accept it. And believe me, I haven't paid enough attention to certain things that I should have, and it's cost me. And I myself have to pay more attention to that stuff. But yeah, we can't every day just do the inspiring, cool, fun, oh my God, we had a big sale, look at the problem myself thing. Yeah, it's all part of the package.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's a mental health issue, and I'm totally accepting of that. But in my brain chemistry is such that when I work with any of these people, it can take up my brain for days.
Yeah.
And if I could take a pill to get rid of that, I would. But it's the nature of whatever it is I'm working on. I'm really pretty obsessive and focused on it. And quite frankly, I don't want to be focused on my trademark or patent. I mean, I should be, I know that, but I don't like my brain cycling on those issues.
Let's bring William into this. Are there parts of the job of being the owner, the boss, that you just don't like dealing with?
Oh, it's easy being the owner and boss. You just work whenever you want to. You don't have to report to anybody. It's
play golf. Throw that in.
No, it's such a tightrope walk, Lauren. It's the best job or position or role I've ever had. And it's also one that there's never a greater sense of freedom and at the same time responsibility and humbling that, the decisions I make are going to affect other people. I don't think that there are things I don't like. Sounds arrogant, but there are times where we hire an expert to help us with something, and then Adrian and I sit down and end up figuring out a better way to do it.
Adrian's your wife?
Yeah. Why are we the ones coming up with the best idea? Mm-hmm. We have a religion degree and a biology degree. This is so stupid. Why is there not somebody smart? That sounds totally arrogant. I guess what I'm saying is I love having people that are smarter than me, and it's frustrating when we hire someone that doesn't come through on that promise.
Yeah.
I've had that. It's unbelievable that I've had to tell a lawyer, wait, why are we doing this? And I was right. I mean, it blows my mind that does happen.
Yeah, I have a couple of instances where the lawyer wasn't very creative about solutions. And like, for instance, with my trademark, there was someone that held a very similar trademark to the one that I wanted. And we were going through all these legal means, and the lawyer even wanted me to change the entire name of my business, which had already been in operations for a while. And I basically looked up the guy who owned the trademark, contacted him on LinkedIn, and he very graciously sold me his trademark, which he wasn't using. He knew how important that trademark was to me, and I'll forever be grateful to him. But the lawyer advised me not to do that. And then there was another spot where there was kind of a bump in the road with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And I just went in and I emailed the reviewer at the USPTO and asked my question. The lawyer also didn't like that I did that, but I ended up moving the thing forward in a way that he didn't. And so in both of those instances, I did something that they wouldn't have advised, and I got exactly the outcome I wanted.
I've had that exact same situation just last year, and it was with a trademark thing. Wasted $8,000 in legal bills that I should have spent $0.
All right, we're just about out of time. I want to ask basically one more question, which is, William, you mentioned taking a vacation recently.
Wait, what's that?
Well, that was my first question. Jay, Liz, either of you taking vacations this summer?
I haven't had a vacation in 3 years.
Why?
There's been this pandemic thing going on.
Oh, I heard about that.
Yeah, maybe 2 years.
Are you thinking about it?
I am. I'm going out of the country in October, hopefully.
Good for you. Liz?
Well, we did cancel the vacation we had this summer due to all the work we've brought on. But we have a trip planned for Japan around the holidays that keeps getting bumped because of COVID. And fingers crossed, we're going to have it this year. So we're all really looking forward to that. My 16-year-old daughter actually planned the whole thing.
Wow.
Found the flights, found the Airbnbs, found, the excursions we're going to go on. So she made it very easy for us to say yes to that vacation,
Smart
which
kid.
Is probably more expensive and more time consuming than we would have planned, but it made it very easy.
There's your answer. She needs to deal with the accountants and the lawyers and the insurance people. Done. Family business.
Yeah.
All right. My thanks to Jay Goltz, Liz Picarazzi, and William Vanderbloemen. As always, thanks for sharing, guys. Wait. Don't leave yet. If you have a question or a comment that you'd like the 21 Hats owners to address, send it to me by replying to your morning report or by email at lauren@21hats.com. That's LOREN@21hats.com. Do it now before you forget. And don't be afraid to tell Jay what you really think. He can take it. And if you got something out of this conversation, help us reach more business owners. Tell a friend. Subscribe and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to the Morning Report at 21hats.com. This episode was produced by Jess Thuberon, founder of Blank Word Productions. Okay, now you can leave. Thanks for listening, everyone.